A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to uh, the Ahmadiyya Association of Muslim Scientists lecture series, and today we have we have a special lecture by respected Asif Parvez Sahib, and he's sitting with me in Tahir Hall right now, and we have online attendees also. So I will give a brief introduction. After this, inshallah, I will hand over to Asif Saab for a presentation. So Asif Ali Parvez Sahib is based in London, UK. He began his education at Talim Islam High School, Rabwah, and earned an M.Sc in physics. He served as president of the Abdus Salam Physics Society at Talim Islam College in 1970. In 1971, he received a merit certificate in M.Sc Physics from the University of Punjab and was appointed as lecturer in physics at Talim Islam College by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III, alayhi, even before his M.Sc results were out. Respected Parvez Sahib dedicated 3 years to Waqf in Sierra Leone, West Africa, working with the late Mubarak Nazir Sahib, former Missionary-in-Charge of Canada. In 1977, he moved to the UK to study computers at King's College London. He has over 35 years of experience in senior position as a computer consultant. An ardent admirer of Professor Abdus Salam, respected Parvez Sahib has delivered numerous lectures and written extensively about Dr. Abdus Salam's life and achievements. Since February 2014, he has authored 92 articles of Al-Manar UK, a magazine for alumni of Talim Islam College. He has also created over 30 YouTube programs titled Holy Quran and Science. Now I will hand over to Asif Parvez Sahib.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. It's a great pleasure for me to talk about the personality, Professor Abdus Salam Sahib, the Nobel laureate. I will divide this lecture into 3 sections. Firstly, I will talk about his childhood and his education. Secondly, I will talk about his scientific discoveries, which are of the Nobel laureate level. And third, I will talk about his service to Pakistan and to international community of science. So let's start with his childhood. His father, late father, his name was Chaudhry Muhammad Hussain Sahib. He was a very pious and righteous person. And he wrote in his diary, so I am quoting from them, that one day he was praying and he read this verse, Wallazina yakuluna rabbana hablana min azwajina wa zurriyatina qurrata ayunim wajalna lil muttaqina imama. And his translation is, and those who say, our Lord, grant us of our wives and children the delight of our eyes and make us a model for the righteous people. During he saw a spiritual vision, which in Urdu we called Kashf. And he wrote in his diary that a boy was handed over to him. And when he asked what's his name, he was told Abdus Salam. When the child was born, he wrote a letter to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III, and described his dream, his spiritual vision. And then he said, kindly give him a name. And Hazur replied back that God Almighty has given the name Abdus Salam. Who am I to change the name? Now, Abdus Salam Sahib was a brilliant student. In 1940, he passed his what we called metric exam. I think it's called 12th grade or whatever it is in Canada. We call it England O levels, and 1942 A levels. And he stood first on the top for both of these. And I may mention these remarks. And he was awarded a scholarship of rupees 30. In those days, rupees 30 was a lot of money, from Punjab University, and rupees 45 from Ahmadiyya Jubilee Fund from Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III. Then he moved to the Government College Lahore, and he did his BA and his MA from there. Again, he stood first. So throughout his career, he was top. So that's why I say he was a gifted child and he was a born genius. Now I want to mention this gentleman. His name is Sir Chotu Ram. He was the minister at that time in the government of Punjab. He collected a lot of money there's a war going on. So he collected a lot of money to help British government to fund the war. War stopped in 1945 and there was a lot of money left in the kitty. So he set up what we call Peasant Welfare Fund. And the purpose of this fund was to give scholarship to the, not very rich people, but to the relatively poor farmers who have small land, so they don't have income to send their children to abroad. Now, Professor Abdus Salam Sahab's father was not a very rich man. And luckily, his paternal uncle transferred some land to him. So he became like a farmer. And Salam Sahib applied for scholarship and he was awarded scholarship. And he went to St. John's College in Cambridge. I had the great opportunity to visit that college from 1946 to 1949. And he passed, it's interesting. Either he already done MA, and normally when you done MA or M.Sc, you do PhD. But he decided to go back and do a degree again. So he did a degree, and 1948, he passed what's called the TRIPOS exam, which is like a degree. And he was so brilliant. He was awarded the Wrangler. Wrangler is like a unique title, which was given to the, and as far as I know, no Pakistani have ever received this award. 1 year scholarship was left. So his professor Verdi said, you might studying physics. And he said, I've studied physics last 6 years. And I want you to get first class. So anyway, Professor Salam took the challenge. And lo and behold, he did get first class. So getting graduation, he then came back to Pakistan. And he decided to do the PhD. And again, a scholarship was awarded to him. And he came to St. John's College in 1949. Then Pakistan was there, 1947, Pakistan came into being. So he went there and he did a study on this topic, which is very difficult even to pronounce. So I'm not going to explain what it is. Quantum electrodynamics. I just call it QED. This was the hot topic at that time. And only handful of people knew about it. So his professor, whose name was Professor Nicholas Kammer, he was a Russian professor, he sent in to one of his students called Paul Matthews, and he has done a PhD already. So when Professor Salam Sahib met him, he said, his sentence was, are there any crumbs left? Which means you might have solved all the problem. Is there any small problem which I can address? And he laughed and said, look, I've only solved it level 2. If you solve it to level 3 or 4, PhD is yours. Now, what happened, a gentleman, Englishman, his name is Professor Freeman Dyson. He was professor at the Princeton University in America, very famous university. And he was considered to be authority on this subject in the whole world. So luckily, he had come to Birmingham in England. So Salam Sahib contacted him, said, I want to see you, get some guidance. So he said, come to Birmingham, we chat about it. And he gave me half an hour. And then said, oh, look, I have to catch the train because I have to go to America back and I have to go to London. So Professor Salam, so the young Salam, I should say, he was a young man, only less than 21 years old. He said, you mind if I try to sit in the same compartment and we have another 1 hour of chat? So he agreed, and he was very pleased that this gentleman is very interested to learn from. Anyway, they had a long chat. At the end, he said, Salam, I don't know the answer. If I knew the answer, I will win the Nobel Prize. So you are on your own. So Salam came back to Cambridge, to his college. And he was again a very righteous, person always work with prayers. So he said, I pray to God. Look, nobody's here to help me. My supervisor said, I don't know much about it. You're on your. So he started work and he said, God guided me. And I solved this problem, not to the third level, not to the fourth level, but to the infinity. You know what's infinity? Is the biggest number you can imagine. So it was all a mathematical solution. So then he wrote a thesis and he said to his supervisor, Professor Kemmer, he said, look, sir, I've done my work. Have a look at it. He read it and he said, this is beyond. He said, what you have done, I have never dreamt anybody could do it. There is only one person who can say yes, and that's Professor Dyson, who is in Princeton. So they agreed to send his thesis to him. And when he looked at thesis, he was shocked. He said, I met a young Pakistani and we traveled together and he has solved a problem I've spent nearly 10 years of my life and I can't solve. So he was extremely happy, so happy that he took his thesis to Robert Oppenheimer, who was the director of it. Anybody knows who is Oppenheimer? Yes, sir. Exactly, Van Leeuwen. He was the project director. So we called him father of atom bomb. So when he read the thesis, they were shocked. And they said, this boy is an absolute gem. So we invite him to come to Princeton and offered him a sponsorship. And obviously they passed the message. Naturally, you could imagine how happy young Salam was. So he traveled to America. And the other reason of his happiness was the Albert Einstein, who we called as the father of science. He was alive. So he said, oh, I will have the golden opportunity. It's like that science azure. So what an opportunity to meet this man. So anyway, he went there and he realized that Einstein used to leave his house around 10 o'clock. He was living in the university compound. So he used to stand out at his house and escort him to his office. And Einstein was very impressed that, a young man, who cares for old people in Western countries. So anyway, he was very pleased. One day he came out and he stood there and he said, these are his words, young man, what's your topic of research? And Salam Sahib said, I'm doing QED. And he said, do you have any interest to combine gravity? Gravity is, you throw something out, comes down, and light, electricity. And I will talk about it a little bit more later. And he said, I have worked on this subject nearly 10 years, and I can't do it. And one thing he said, and this is the important thing, he said, when scientists learn how to combine these two forces, gravity and electromagnetic force, we call it, electric force, let's say, then they will know how universe was created. Very important thing. And my comment on this is that Abdus Salam kept this thing in his mind, that one day I will do the research on this subject. Now, the rules in college was that unless you have done 3 years research, they don't give you PhD. Now, Professor Kemmer wrote to the authorities. He said, look, Salam have done more than works. He deserves a PhD. And the best scientists in the world have said that he has achieved what they couldn't do it. A topic worthy of Nobel Prize. So the university changed the rules. Now, this is the key word. Professor Salam Sahib was so genius, born genius, that's what I say. The rules were changed that he should be awarded PhD, and so he got the PhD. And he was awarded the Smith Prize, which is best prize, gold medal, but after scientist Smith Prize, very highly prestigious prize. Anyway, and 1951, they offered him fellowship, which is again a great honor. He went to Pakistan. He loved Pakistan, I must say that. And he was offered a professorship in the Government College, Lahore, where he studied. His principal at that time was Sirajuddin. He was an MA English, nothing to do with science. And he never studied overseas. So he called him very day in his office and he said, Salam, I know you have done some wonderful research. I'm not interested in it. Our college is famous to produce the best bureaucrats in the country, and they run the country. So I want you to forget this research and start teaching them, like we studied, you learn a lesson, you remember it by heart, and you did it. Nothing of your own contribution. But Salam was different. He wanted people to think on it. And then he said, all right, in your spare time, what do you want to do? I'll give you a choice. Become a warden of the hostel or become a bursar, who looks after the finances of the college. Or you become a coach of football team. And guess what? What Salam chose? He said, I'll become the coach of football team. And this is a very unique picture where, I put a circle around it so you could see young Salam there. Next to him sitting Professor Siraj and his football team. Anyway, the important thing is Professor Salam was a born scientist. And he was like top of the scientist list, if you could say top 100 scientists, he was one of them at the age of like 23, 24 years old. And he wanted, that was his career. So luckily what happened, there was a professor, and I will talk about in my next slide later, Wolfgang Pauli, Nobel laureate. He has come to India and he wrote to Salam. He said, Professor Salam, I'm feeling very lonely here. Nobody understands me. Come to India. So first I went to see him, and the two geniuses talked about different topics, and Salam came very motivated to do more work. But lo and behold, when he came, there was a charge sheet. He said, how dare you leave the Pakistan without the permission? Professor Salam didn't know that he had to take the permission. So anyway, the matter went all the way. They wanted to sack him, all the way to Sanctity Education, who knew him very well, that he is a brilliant person. And so, all right, close this matter. 2 weeks you are away, we don't pay you any money for that. The matter was closed. So I now want to move to the second phase, which is his scientific research, which is primary thing for me. Now, he has written many hundreds of research papers, very high level research. And they have published in the best magazines where Nobel laureates research papers are published. 3 examples I'm going to give you. One I've already given to about quantum electrodynamics. That work deserved a Nobel Prize. But he was only a student. He has not even done a PhD. So obviously it couldn't be considered. But as I said, Professor Dyson said, if I had done this, I would have got a Nobel Prize. So that's something I'm talking only. The second one is what called weak nuclear force. Now I will explain this a little bit later. And third is electroweak theory. So again, I will talk about it. So now what happened, and it is decree of Allah, as I say. God was helping him all because he wanted him to do something which I will explain a little bit later. Professor Kemmer, his supervisor, got a head of department position in the university. So he took that role and he wrote to the Dean of Science. He said, the only person who can take this post is Professor Abdus Salam. You mind offering him a job? And they offered him a job. And Professor Salam was a little bit reluctant to leave Pakistan because he loved Pakistan. His family was there and he loved Pakistan. He was a born Pakistani and he wanted to be there. So he was double-minded. Then Professor Kemmer wrote to the government of Punjab, Pakistan. They said, look, this man is of international stature. Even if he's Pakistan, he's not going to do what he has the ability to do. Please release him. So again, one of Sanctity Education, and he heard, he said, what an honor. You have been offered a job at Cambridge University. It's a dream. For a Pakistani? So he said, please go. So Professor Abdus Salam Sahib left Pakistan in 1953 on his own will. I will deliberately use this word, but I'm not going to say it because some people say he was thrown out of it. That's a lie. He went on his own will, and at Cambridge, he was in paradise. Paradise of scientists. The best brains were there. So he wrote many research papers in very first year. And then I'm now going to talk about Nobel. Does anybody know that Professor Salam should have got his first Nobel Prize when he was only 31? Anybody knows? Okay, I'll tell you why and what he did. Little bit scientific, but I will try to explain it in layman terms. So he missed, what I've said is he missed his Nobel Prize in 1977. He was only 31 years old, a very young man. So now I'm going to, this thing is a picture of atom. I'm sure most of you know. Inside the atom, there is nucleus with the protons and neutrons, and electrons are revolving around it. So God Almighty has created four we call fundamental forces. And these forces were created 13.7 billion years ago. We scientists have only discovered them in last century. So you could imagine when God created it and we human beings learned. One is gravitational force, which I said you throw a thing, comes back. So everybody knows that. Second is what we call electromagnetic force, because if you have electricity, you can make magnet. If you have magnet, you can make electricity. And the range of this force, now nobody can comprehend what I'm going to say. 93 billion light years. Such a big distance. No, my brain can't understand how big it is. That's the width of the universe. And these forces have impact there. On the other hand, there are two other forces. One's called weak nuclear force, and the other is called strong nuclear force. And this range is so small, I've written it 1/1 million meters. So small, again, human brain can't come. So this is what God created. Now, what do these forces do? I have just put a picture there, so let me take. In fact, I have to give you a very long lecture, at least 1 hour lecture. And then with that lecture, I will demonstrate that these forces are mentioned in Surah Fatih. So I hope one day when I come back again, I will give this lecture. So let's quickly go through these forces. Strong force is what we call that binds the nucleus. So if this force was not there, the nucleus will disintegrate, which means your body and my body will disintegrate into small, tiny particles. Then is weak nuclear force, and that produces what we call radioactivity. You know, there's some radiation we call it alpha, beta, and gamma rays. I'm not going into detail of that. The third force is called electromagnetic force, which binds the atom. So they make nucleus in the center and electrons going round and around it. So that's how atom is, and we are all made up of it. And the fourth force is gravitational force, which binds the solar system. In fact, it binds the whole universe. And if God's decree decides that any of these forces will disappear, the whole universe will collapse like a house of cards. And our body will disintegrate into small fundamental particles. No, nothing will be left. Now, I'm not going to explain this technical diagram, but the important thing, there is a message here, and I want you to remember that. There was a science conference in America, and the best scientists came to attend that, and Prof. Salam was invited to attend as well. And there he said, all of the scientists said that all these forces behave symmetrically. Again, I will explain. Symmetry is a technical term. I will explain layman's term later. But like same, that's the best English word. They behave like same. Like Prof. Salam Sahib said, and they don't distinguish whether it's a left spin or right spin. Let's not go into technical. But they behave same. That's the enough sentence to say. Professor Salam said, no. My research says that weak electric force behaves different. Everybody disagreed. Yes. So, as I said, nobody agreed with him. Now, I want to first quote a verse of Holy Quran, and then I will explain. Allah Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. That surely we have created man in the best make. Surah Al-Tin, verse 5. Now, this is my picture. I'm not promoting myself, but the reason I'm showing you, Azur Anwar Ayyadullah bin Saris is very graciously presenting me or offering me the first prize. And my speech of talk was Abdus Salam. So that's why I put this picture. Now, if I look at me or you look at yourself, what has God created? He gave me 2 ears. They are very similar. 2 eyes, very similar. 2 hands, very similar. So this is symmetry. And symmetry creates beauty. And this is a theme throughout. If you look at a flower, you know, its petals are very symmetrical. That's why they look beautiful. The question was this. why? Why Prophet Salam is saying the weak nuclear force behaves differently. So in this, I've just summed up what I've just said. The weak nuclear force violates symmetry. That's the phrase I'm using. That's a technical, that this does not behave like other forces. Yeah. Now I want to give you a layman example just to explain my point. So I'm not going to go into science. If you look at your hands, are these 5 fingers same? No, they're not. Why? Where's symmetry gone? So the reason is, if my 5 fingers were same, I couldn't use the roti, I couldn't hold the screwdriver. So what I'm saying is, where there is a justified purpose, God has used the other option because he is all-knowing, all-wise. So God knew where symmetry is important, and he knew where you have to deviate from. Now I will come to science and I will explain that. So now what happened, I'm telling you a story as well, so keep things in your mind. When he was leaving USA, in those days, aeroplanes were not flying like I take airplane in any Air Canada or British Airways that just came last night. And they put him on a military airplane. And he said in his own lecture, told us. And this knowledge is my direct knowledge from him. He used to come and lecture us. So I call myself a humble student of Professor Salam because I learned directly from him. So anyway, he said, they put me in this military airplane. The seat was so uncomfortable. And on top of it, there were wives and children of army. And they were crying and weeping. And I said, I couldn't sleep. So he said, all right, I can't sleep. What should I do with my time? He said, I started thinking, why nature or God have made weak nuclear force different from the other? There has to be a reason for that. So he remembered, he said, when he was doing PhD, his professor, who I will mention a little bit later, he asked him a question. And I tell you what is that question. His name was Professor Rudolf Peels. He was an Englishman based at Birmingham University. And Salam Sahib went to give a verbal examination. And he asked him a question. And I will explain a little bit. He said, tell me why neutrino has small or infinitesimally small mass. Now, young Salam, he was not PhD at that time. He Professor is asking a question and he doesn't know the answer because nobody on this earth knows the answer of this question. So he was surprised. Now, let me just tell you, anybody who knows what's neutrino, you should know it.
Neutrons?
Neutrino. Okay, I tell you. Neutron, you just said, you could treat neutrino as the great grandson of Newton. It has no charge, like neutron, no charge. And weight is given that 1,000,000 times lighter than electron. So small. That's why I use it for infinitesimally small. But it is so powerful. When I use the word neutrino, it has gone around the earth many times. So it runs at this. And I want to ask, if I raise my finger, tell me how many neutrons are passing through my finger. That's my question. Put a figure, any figure which comes to your mind. 20 billion? No, 20 billion is too much. It is nearly 1 to 3 million neutrinos are passing through my finger. So in your body, my body, they're passing through that. And God has created it in abundance. They're coming from sun, they're coming from stars, they're coming from black hole, they're coming from supernova, anything you can think in universe. And these neutrons coming. And this, I'm making this sweeping statement. No neutrino, no universe. And again, I have to give you a lecture on that, why I've said. But what I've said is right. Now, weak nuclear force, which I mentioned, and Professor Salam Sahib said it violates the symmetry. And why it violates symmetry? That's the $1,000,000 question, which his professor asked him when he was doing PhD. And while sitting in the airplane, he said, a wave came to my mind. Oh, I know why God did this. Because God wanted neutrino to have an infinitesimal small mass, And if neutrino had no mass, there won't be any universe. So it was decree of Allah. And he wanted to do this. And Abdus Salam Sahib, I was over the moon when this thought came to my mind. So he came to Cambridge University. He wrote a thesis. And he went to meet the editor of Physical Review, a very big scientist. You know, articles of like Nobel laureates. At that levels, people were not mine, not others, that levels. And he met the editor, who was a Nobel laureate himself, and he was theoretical physics, which Professor Abdus Salam Sahib. He read this. He said, Professor Salam, this is revolution. Be prepared. When it is published, you will be criticized from left, center. Every professor in the university in the world will criticize you because nobody is going to accept this. But I am going to accept it because I think what you are saying makes sense. Even though it goes against everybody's thought. So, Professor Slav, he said, okay, I go to that professor who asked me this question maybe 5 years ago or whatever, and I go and tell him, and he explained to me, he said, look, you asked me this question, I know the answer now. So he listened to very attentively, and he said, this is weak nuclear force, the voice. And Professor said, sorry, Professor, I'm not going to agree with you. It's beyond my brain to comprehend. You are saying something which is against everybody. Nobody on this is going to accept this, so I'm not going to accept it. In fact, his sentence was, I won't touch it with a barge pole. You know, the barge, when you boat, there's a big long pole and you push the water. Anyway, then Professor Salam said, okay, I send this one to Professor Wolfgang Pauli. He was the one who discovered neutron. So he was, we call him father of neutrino. Literally neutrino, not neutron. We call him father. And he was awarded Nobel Prize. So professor of a very high stage. And he said his thesis. He read it and he wrote 2 lines answer. And exactly I copied it. Greeting to Professor Salam, please think something better. So he didn't agree with him either. Now, naturally, Professor Salam was a little bit taken aback. He said, the best 2 scientists in the world have not agreed with me. And in America, no scientist agreed with me. So I think I need to do more research. So he went to see the editor and he said, please don't print my paper. And he said, look, it has been typed, it has proofread. I'm going to print it next month. But Professor Salam insisted, please don't. And I have written, I wish. And I will tell you why I'm saying again. I wish Professor Salam had not withdrawn. But what happened? At that time, there were 2 scientists, American Chinese scientists, Professor Yang and Professor Lee. Those photos are there. They were doing the research as well. And they came to the same conclusion which Professor Abdus Salam have already come. And in this paper where they wrote, they also said, we have read Professor Salam's thesis. And weak nuclear force does violate symmetry. And they published the paper. And there was another lady, Professor Wu, she did some experiments. And she said, oh, experimentally, I can say weak nuclear force violates symmetry. So the paper published, and both these scientists were awarded Nobel Prize. Then there was a lot of hue and cry amongst the scientific community. There was Professor Salam, who was the first person to tell this. He wrote the paper. But obviously, Nobel Committee either didn't know or they had a rule, unless your paper is published, it's reviewed by other professors, then, they have obviously their mechanism. So anyway, Purcell missed Nobel. And obviously, he was very unhappy that why he took the advice of these 2 top scientists. He should have cut it. That's why I keep saying, I wish he had done it. Anyway, one of the famous English newspapers wrote a big article, criticized this Nobel. This is the man who did it first. Why you have to edit him? And anyway, this bit of history, he missed it. Now, a gentleman, Chaudhry Muhammad Ali Sahib, he was the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan. He had come to London for his medical treatment. Obviously, this news has spread in the newspaper that Professor Salam missed the Nobel Prize. So when Professor went to see him, to see how he is, he was very sorry. He said, Islam, so sad. They missed you. You were the pioneer. You should have been given the Nobel. So anyway, he said, I'm going to write to government of Pakistan to award you the presidential medal. So he was awarded presidential medal, and in those days, rupees 20,000 was quite a big money, but money not. What I've just said is there's no comparison between president medal and Nobel. But Professor deserved, in fact, he deserved Nobel Prize when he did his PhD. He deserved Nobel Prize, and this, but I missed it. So my comment on this one is, Prof, this decree of God. God wanted him to do some bigger research, better research. And so that's how it happened. Now I'm coming to where he actually won the Nobel Prize. And this photograph is when he is being awarded Nobel Prize by the King of Sweden. I just go back a bit. And you see, one thing I want, he's not wearing a Western suit like I am wearing. He's wearing a turban. He's wearing a sherwani. He's wearing even the, look at shoes. Look at his shalwar. Typical Pakistani. And he wanted, the message was this, and that's the key thing. By just wearing this dress, he wanted to pass the message to the world. We Pakistanis can do. Otherwise, it's always Nobel Prize are won by the Western, America, Canada, Australia, England, these countries. So I admire him. And it's a great thing, to wear shalwar kameez where all the dignitaries are there. Now, he won the prize with the Nobel Prize with 3 people, Professor Steve Weinberg, Professor Abdus Salam, which is in middle, and Professor Sheldon Glashow. And do you know in one sentence what he did? Any idea? Okay, I'll tell you what he did. What he did was this. He said, and he proved obviously mathematically, because it's all mathematics. Because as I said, range of weak nuclei is so small you can't judge it. A range of electric force is so big you can't judge it. It's all mathematics. He proved, and this is the key word, that a weak nuclear force and the electromagnetic force, their source is one. Now remember this sentence. There are 2 different forces today, but at one point in time, they were one force. Why they were one force? I will come and explain to this. Now, one thing I want to say here, according to my research, and my friend have said, I've written 92 articles about Professor. So I've done a lot of research about it. Nobel Committee who awarded him the Nobel Prize, they wrote, and I quote more or less, that all 3 professors have made great contribution. We can't say Professor Sam did the best, or Professor Weinberg did the best, or Professor Glashow did the best. But they said all 3 have made significant contribution to prove that electromagnetic force and weak nuclear at some point in time. And what that was some point in time, I will explain a little bit later. And they said all 3 deserved, and so they did. Unfortunately, I'm saying really unfortunately, there are some quarters, and I don't want to even name the country, they are doing a propaganda that Prof. Salam cheated and won the Nobel. That's absolutely lie. I am a professor. So I know exactly what he did. It's too technical to describe in this audience, but I can give 100% guarantee that all these 3 professors have made great contribution. Now I want to mention one of our meetings. When I was a professor at TI College, Rabwah, we, the professors and M.Sc students, went to see Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III, rahmatullah alayhi. And Hazur started talking about Professor Salam. And he said that Professor Salam will win the Nobel Prize. I must say, I was a bit shocked. It is 1972. I mean, how can Hazur say? But then my other brain said, Hazur has said it, it is going to happen. Whatever happens, it is going to happen. And each year I used to check who won the Nobel, who won the Nobel, who won the Nobel Prize. And 97, I was actually in England at that time, in London, when the news came that he has won the Nobel Prize. And Professor Abdus Salam, what he did, as soon as somebody telephoned him that you have won the Nobel Prize, he went to the Fazl Mosque. I don't know, probably you have visited that mosque. He did his two nafas rakat there, thank God Almighty, and then went to Imperial College, where he was the head of department, when press conference was organized. So that shows how devoted Ahmadi he was. And what I've said is what Hazur said, I call it prophecy. His word was fulfilled. And I'm sure he must be praying for him as well. And that, have, what word should I say? That Khalafat is from God. It's Khalifa who makes the God is who makes the Khalifa. And it's God, any word which comes from his mouth is guided by the God. Now, question comes, well, what's the issue? Why unify the force? What's the problem? There are four forces. Why you want to marry two forces together? And I give you three answers. One is two are scientific, the other is religious. Now, and I will explain this first statement a little bit more in detail. If there was not single force, which we scientists call unified force, universe would have not been created. So I stop there. Secondly, I say this, that a time will come. It may come in this century. It may come in the next century, when the new technologies will develop, and I have no idea what those technologies will. And you may question me, why you're saying this? What proof you have got? And the only proof I'm going is there was a professor called Maxwell. He was a Scottish guy, mathematician. In 1865, so less than 200 years ago, he wrote a paper, and in which he said electricity and magnetism are one force. And I thought at that time, around maybe a half dozen people couldn't understand what he was talking about. 50 years later, Edison came. You might have heard his name. He's a Nobel laureate as well. He read this paper. He said, oh, it's marvelous. I can make power station on that basis. So he built a first power station in New York, and now power stations everywhere. This electricity is coming from. So that's why I'm saying, at that time, nobody could understand what Robert Maxwell was saying. Same today. I watched a program coming from Pakistan, and one mullah was saying, oh, so what? Salam approved these two forces. What's benefit to me? So what can I say? When his great-great-great-grandchildren will be born, then we'll say Professor Salam did something, because today you are using, mobile, this computer, all based on electromagnetic, magma force. And they will say, oh, technology, I don't know what's technology name is. This is based on electroweak force. And they will remember Professor Salam and his two colleagues. Now, third is religion. Let me give a bit of background. As my good friend have said, I have a great love for Holy Quran, and we always have. But I look at it from a scientific angle as well. And even Prof. Salam Sahib in one of his lectures said, there are 750 verses which talk of science in Holy Quran. So now I picked one verse, I read first and do it. I says, Allah Ta'ala says, Avalam yaral lazina kafaru anna samawati wal arza kanata ratkan fafataknahuma. Translation is, do not the disbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were a closed up mess. This word is very important, note, closed up mess. Then we opened them out. Al-Anbiya, verse 31. This is exactly what Big Bang is. Big Bang says 13.7 billion years ago, the whole universe like a dot. Dot is too big, infinitesimally small, single point, singularity, we call it sun. And then some had happened. And no scientists in the world know where this unified force came from. Somebody must have created. We as Ahmadi Muslim, because God says, I created it. But I'm sure one day another Islam will be born. And he will prove that this is the mechanism which God used to create this force. And why I'm saying this thing? God is one. So in his creation, and his biggest creation is universe. God has said in Holy Quran, that creation universe is even bigger than the creation of human beings. So he created the universe. So he created with a single force, and that was a reflection of God's unity. So that's my religious point. Now I have other quoted another verse. Oh, yes, I want to say this thing as well. My mission in my life. I'm 74 years old, so how long I live. My mission in life is that I will make programs, and I've already made 33 programs. They are available on YouTube, and they are available on Amdia YouTube channel as well. Because when I started my channel, the Naib Amir Sahib, who is in charge of IT, said, "Oh, yeah, so good program, put it on Amdia channel." So I closed my channel there. So I am making program, his heading is Holy Quran and Science. And what I'm trying to demonstrate to the whole world is that Holy Quran is word of God and science is action of God. So two must be same. Otherwise, people think religion, this thing, science, this thing, we have nothing in common. But that's my mission of my life. And inshallah, Aziz, I'm going to start another series. Your Amir Sahib have got all those programs. So please request on my behalf to share that with the Jamaat members. And I can assure you, even in this presentation, I've tried not to be technical, which I can. So I have made those programs in a way that they are relatively non-technical. So layman could understand. When Professor Salam Sahib won the Nobel Prize, after that there was a speech, and he read this verse, Ma tara fi khalqi rahman min tafawut, farjil basar, hal tara min futur. No incongruity you can see in the creation of the gracious God. Then look again. Do you see any flaw? Surah Al-Mulk, verse 4. Again, I have prepared another lecture, but you don't have time. I've got time on the creation of universe. And then I could explain that. So maybe when I come next time, I will probably spend a little more time and do give it. So interesting is, Prasram made this speech in Urdu. That shows that all the dignitaries are sitting. Obviously, you've told them, this is my speech. You must have given them translation in English or whatever. But he made this speech in Urdu to prove that Pakistanis can do something as well. That shows his love. Unfortunately, he's not valued in Pakistan the way he deserved. Anyway, let's move on. President Janazia, he was the president at that time. He invited, I'm talking 1979, he invited Professor Salam Sahib on an official visit to come to Pakistan. He awarded him a PhD degree as well. And he awarded him this highest civil award, Missionary-in-Charge. And he toured all the universities in Pakistan, and his science was so that people could take more interest in science. Now I want to mention here Surah Fatiha. Only few verses I've used. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. You know, these are the four fundamental attributes of God. And I have to give you a long lecture to prove that these four fundamental attributes of God, there is an example of those attributes in four fundamental forces which God created. But it's long, at least 1 hour lecture. So we'll leave it for them. Yes, please. Now, Surah Fatiha, as I said, I've summed it up. I quickly read it. The sustainer, Rab, sustainer is equivalent to gravity. The example is gravity. Gracious electromagnetic force, merciful weak nuclear force, and master judgment, strong nuclear force. Now I want to just pick Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. And respective Missionary-in-Charge Sahib, you know Arabic more than me. You know, there is a haruf called haruf talata mujarrad, or in English we call it trilateral root. So every noun in Arabic comes from three. Now, if you focus at Ar-Rahman, his roots are Ra, Ha, Mim, R, H, M. And look at Rahim, Ra, Ha, Mim, R, H, and M. Now think about it. I want to quote a couplet of Hazrat Masih Islam, and it's in Urdu, so let me read in Urdu that up. Hazur says, सोचो दुआए फातिहा को पढ़ के बार बार करती है ये तमाम हकीकत को आशिक. Now, you know, and I know Hazrat Masih Islam have written so much, explanation of Surah Fatiha. No other, previous scholars can reach to. But then when I read it, Hazur is ordering me, ordering you, socho, that you have to think. So I questioned myself, why Hazur is ordering me? Then I thought, oh, there is a prophecy hidden in it. And then I started looking at these four wonderful forces, which are my favorite topic. And I could talk about hours upon hours on this. And then Hazur said Surah Fatiha. And then this daunted to me. He said, what Hazur was mentioned was, think about Rahman Rahim. After my death, probably 30, 40, 50 years of my death, scientists will born and they will prove that weak nuclear force and electromagnetic force, their root is one. And they have given it the name electroweak force. And just think what I've done. God has already mentioned it. So I was over the moon when I said, well, look, I have answered, what Hazrat Islam was demanding from them. I'm sure there are brilliant people, much more knowledgeable people. They will come probably a better explanation. But to me, it's a wonderful explanation of Surah Fatiha. Now I want to come to his services to Pakistan and international community. As I said, unfortunately, because he's an Ahmadi, he is not valued. I mean, a few months ago, there was a science conference in Islamabad. Unfortunately, the mullahs cancelled that. And now there's a campaign going on. So I hope this presentation for the honest people in the world and in the Pakistan who are watching this will at least get the true image of Professor. And this is my humble contribution. He's my professor, and I'm a humble student. So this is my contribution. Anyway, let's move to service to Pakistan. And now Professor Abdus Salam was appointed as advisor Education Commission, which looks after the old university in 1959 by President Ayub, most of you know, the golden period of Pakistan. Then he was a member of Scientific Commission, again, very high level commission. He was, member of the Pakistan Atomic Energy. And Ayub Khan made him his scientific advisor from 1961. And then, obviously, in 1974, we will explain a little bit more later, what happened to us. And he resigned. But I will talk about it a little bit later. Now, I've just picked few examples. He wanted Pakistan to lead into the research in space. Now, I'm talking 1961. India had not even started the program. And he set up an institute called Space and Upper Atmosphere Research Commission. And he was there when the first rocket was launched. I didn't put this picture in, but I have got that picture. And then he set 5 research councils as advisor to President of Pakistan. Some is research on wheat, research on rice, research on metallurgy, so that the industry could flourish. Yeah. And he was the one who built, not personally built, but he was the, that's called projector, he was the chief advisor to build a first nuclear plant called as the Pakistan Institute of Nuclear Science Technology. In 1972, I had the honor to visit there. Now you're not allowed to go there, because that's where the atom bomb was made. But Professor Salam was always believed in useful purpose of atomic energy. So he set up a Karachi nuclear power plant, and the picture which I'm showing you, Professor Abdus Salam Sahib is making the welcome lecture, where all the scientists from the world came, and you can see Mr. Bhutto, who was the Prime Minister, he's sitting there, and another gentleman, I think chairman from the mission. And what he did, he facilitated 500 scientists to come to England, America, Canada, other countries, do PhD with one condition: go back and do the research or work at this atomic reactor. Now, as I said, give me something to bottle. Professor Abdus Salam believed in the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Can you tell me do you know where God is producing nuclear energy? I drink the water, you tell me. Yeah.
Sun.
Well done, sir. In sun, every second, millions of hydrogen bombs are exploding. But God have created a system, and I have to again give you a long lecture on this, that we get the heat, we get the light, but all these radioactivity and the dangers, which we called as solar winds, God have protected us. But that's for another lecture. Anyway, he set up, and there was a Canadian actual company who built that. The atomic reactor was, so we have Pakistan have a growth, because Islam has a great relation with Canada. And it was the other scientists, I must say. I don't want to name anybody here, but it was the other scientists who actually made Pakistan a nuclear force, atomic bomb. And that's the sad story. I feel very sad when I mention about it. And we all have this sweet sad. 1974, a law was passed by the then parliament that Ahmadis are not Muslims. Now, Professor Salam Sahib resigned as a protest. And his resignation letter, he said, nobody, and it's absolutely nobody has a right to say, this is your faith or this is your faith. This is a relationship between God and a human being. And God has said in the Holy Quran, he didn't quote this verse, so I'm quoting this, La ikraha fid din. It's a golden principle God has said, no compulsion in the religion. Choose whatever you like. Even if you become non-believers God, you will be not punished for that reason in this world. On day of judgment, obviously, God will make that decision. So Professor Salam Sahib made a very strong plea, and he said, I'm resigning. I want to disconnect myself from this government, which he has passed. And I am going to, this is my statement, what Professor Salam said 50 years ago, this is 2024, that statement is true today. Just it was true 50 years ago. And those people who dare to enter into the domain of God face the consequences. You know that. And we have witnessed those people. And if in future somebody did this, be prepared for the same fate. Now, as I said, Professor was a man of peace. His name is Abdus Salam. You know, man of peace. He always wanted to, for nuclear energy is a very powerful thing, you know. Even in Canada, there must be a lot of power stations here that run on nuclear energy. So he was chosen in 1955, a young man, as secretary of the International Conference for Peaceful Use of Atom. And he always advocated, this is a great power. Don't make atom bomb. Use it for peaceful purpose. It will change your life. And he was awarded, in 1965, he was awarded by the Peace Medal. It's a very prestigious medal given by the United Nations. And he set up the Third World Academy of Sciences in 1983, and he was his first president. These are his intent. I've just picked few. The list is so long. Okay, I want to now go back to this thing. He had a battle with the Western scientists, because he was a scientist and politician to some extent. He wanted an international center for theoretical physics. And his aim was that scientists from the third world countries like Pakistan, India, underdeveloped countries, they should be invited to the center. They come here, meet Nobel laureates, get new ideas, go back to their own country and flourish the science. And as I said, it's a long story to tell, but after long, hard battle, because Western do not want a third world country to enter into the arena of nuclear science or science. Anyway, got the approval. And he went to Pakistan. He met President Ayub, whose picture there. He said, I want this center to be built in Lahore. So President Ayub said, go see my finance minister. Obviously, he had to finance it. Explain what you have told me, and hopefully he will agree with you. So he went to see his finance minister. And he said, look, I'm not asking a lot of money. What I need, some conference hall like this, where scientists could come from all over the world, give the lectures, Pakistani students, a professor attend these lectures, get new ideas, and few rooms to have to sleep, so they don't have to find hotels. And finance minister thought for some want to build a 5-star hotel. So he wrote a report. He said, "Oh, I have heard what he's saying. He wants to build a 5-star hotel. I haven't got money." How sad! How sad it was. Had he built this center in Pakistan, Pakistan would have been one of, not the best, but one of the countries where science has flourished. And who knows, many other Pakistanis might have won the Nobel. So when Italian government heard of it, his foreign minister came to see him. He said, "I've heard you want to build a center." He said, "Yeah, oh, build here. We give you land. We give fund you." So first meeting which took place, so we opened, was in a rented building, a small building, where many Nobel laureates came. And that center, including Robert Oppenheimer, he came as well, father of atom bomb, and many others. Anyway, Prof. Salam remained, I think, more than 25 years his director. And this picture I'm showing you, this is the world best center, in my opinion. Only center run under UNO. And Prof. Salam Sahib got funds from people like you, rich people, and said, "Give me money, I want to send," and from UNESCO and International Atomic Agency. So he funded, and government of Italy and other governments, when they realized what he has achieved, and I will show you a picture later, and they gave him money. So this center became, and when he died after his death, the organization of that said, now its name is Abdus Salam. What a name. 2 minutes. Oh, okay, carry on. Okay, these are all the prizes. I don't want to go to list. Yes, carry on, sir. Okay, this is plaque which is at his house. Again, this is from British government, and I don't want to read. He says Physics Nobel Laureate. Carry on. Now, these are his peace prizes. Carry on. I don't want to go through this list. And these are the fellowship, virtually everybody. And he received 47 PhDs. Carry on. He died on 21st of November, 1996. And I was in the Fazl Mosque when I saw last time his face. Tears in my eyes. I read Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un. He was taken to Pakistan. He buried there. Last slide. So, in summary, I want to say, he's my hero. He's my mentor. Brilliant scientist, loyal Pakistani, devoted Ahmadi, promoter of science in third world, and a thorough gentleman. This is Professor. Thank you very much for listening.
Jazakallah, respected Asif Parvez Sahib. That was a brilliant lecture, and Jazakallah for enlightening us on the life of Dr. Abdus Salam. I know we have a lot of members here also, and we have around more than, I think, 65 attendees online, alhamdulillah, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. We have a number of questions, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. So I will, we have Missionary-in-Charge Sahib here. I will kindly request him to lead us in silent prayer. So, Missionary-in-Charge Sahib.
We thank Mubarak Nazir Sahib. The way we have seen the flow in his explanations and the presentation, that was really marvelous. And the way we have also observed the zeal for the knowledge, for the science, and for his mentor, for his professor, Dr. Abdus Salam Sahib, that was really very great and very pushing in that way, that we may also continue thinking about many things we have never thought about. So we pray, and we pray that may Allah grant him a long life and give him, enable him to make some more research and continue, as he said, his mission of life, and may Allah enable him to do so. So let us pray together.
Wow, Raya.
Ameen, Allahumma ameen.
Ameen.
Jazakumullah.
Jazakumullah ahsanul jazak. This meeting now ends. Jazakumullah.